Hello everyone, and welcome to Monday's episode of The Trishlyn Show. We will not talk about how nervous I am for today's episode. Actually being able to share a bit of my story as I'm in the process of moving and going from surviving to thriving, kind of the pieces that occurred, the turning point. So I have some notes here, obviously, so that one, it helps me stay focused and share the pieces that I really want to be able to share, because there's a lot in this when it comes to getting out of a toxic relationship and moving from that survival point in your life and into a place where you get to thrive. And I thought it fitting for today's episode, as I am moving tomorrow into my new home, which is my thriving home. You know, this house was survival for me, and now I get to move and I get to thrive. I mean, I've been thriving all along, but yeah. Let me know when you guys come on. Say hi. Let me know you're here. Instagram is still pushing this out, so hopefully it pushes it out and actually gets to notify everyone that we are live. But I will get started on today's episode so that, one, I'm not taking up all of your time for anyone who does catch the replay. Hi, thank you so much for joining. I'm so happy that you guys are here. Today's episode is a bit about my story and going from surviving to thriving. And the biggest part of this story is really sharing the beginning stages of when I first left and came into this house. Today's episode, is really pinpointed by the fact that tomorrow is move day for me. And I cannot wait to share those details as well with the new place. But bear with me, because this is a hard one for me to share. I won't lie, I'm struggling. This is what we have to do, right? We go first. Through the fear. And I'm actually only struggling with this point. So I want to share with you guys the turning point for when I decided it was time. I was done. That flip switched and I was done. Done. Because that was the biggest step for me and for anyone who is going through a toxic relationship or narcissistic abuse, is that turning point where you just decide, hey, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This is not how I want my life to be. So I wanted to start there with that part of my journey and then share a little bit more with you. I won't make it too long because I want it to be digestible as well. If you have been in a toxic relationship, or if you are in a toxic relationship, this episode is very much for you. So please tune in to the entirety of the show. That's why I'm not going to make it too long. Okay. Nerves. My turning point happened just over 2 years ago now. It was the end of July, about a week before my oldest birthday. I remember this day probably more than I should, but there was a lot going on. New windows were being installed. It was hot. There was a temper, which led to an argument. Alcohol was involved. Lots of alcohol was involved. Not on my end. At this point, I had pretty much quit drinking because of all of the things that would happen. Because, if I had a drink, I didn't keep quiet. So, at that point, I had pretty much quit drinking to avoid any arguments. The argument started one night. That night, this is, over 8 beers in. We were in bed. He waited till we got to bed to start the argument. And it's funny how I can share this on a podcast when it's being reiterated to me about, what I've said, but actually saying it myself is a lot more difficult. So the argument went along the lines of, I'm the problem. I'm the reason our neighbors don't like us. Our neighbors don't have a problem with me. And the sooner my oldest hates me, the better. And to do him and the kids a favor and to kill myself. And that right there was my turning point, and I knew I was done. There was no going back from that. Doesn't matter how much alcohol is involved or whatever the excuse is. There are things that you say that cannot be taken back. So from that moment on, I decided that I was done. By December of that year, 2 years ago, whenever. We're not going to go and do years in math because it's just not going to happen. By December of that year, I was out and in here and starting to rebuild my life. Now, a lot of women, myself included, so when I left, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had my business, but my business was generating $0. It couldn't. You can't take on clients and actually focus on your work while you are focusing on not pissing anyone off, walking on eggshells. Nothing's ever good enough. You don't have the confidence to actually show up. Are you supposed to grow in business in that environment? You don't. So when I left, I was a single, stay-at-home mom with no income coming in. So for anyone who has that excuse of, well, I don't have an income, there are things you can do. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that to share, this is my experience and these are the pieces I'm sharing with you. And if I can do it, you can do it too. When I left, my anxiety was through the roof, which would lead to panic attacks. At one point, I have notes of pieces that I wanted to be able to share with you guys so you can see that, leaving is a decision that you have to make. It doesn't mean it's going to be simple after that. But we get to switch from surviving to thriving, which is the whole point of this episode. At one point, my ex came into my house. So my house for me is my safe space. And if you have been in a toxic relationship or you're out of a toxic relationship, you are going to have your safe space. So for me, this was my safe space. This was my space for me to come home. I knew nothing could hurt me here. Until my ex decided that he was just going to come in the house one day. He was picking up the kids, and I think he wanted to use the bathroom, but he came in. And I had said no, and in that time, he continued to argue with me about lawyers' things and this and that. And I asked him to leave, he wouldn't leave. And his girlfriend was sitting in the truck. And it's left to make me look like I'm a crazy person. When at this point, there is still a level of fear instilled in you. He's disrespecting the boundary I had set, not listening, and walking all over anything that I was saying, while still continuing to argue with me. Okay, you guys know this is after I've left. So this is, I'm trying to paint you this picture of, this is how it was. This is how things were last year. That was last August, I believe, when he had walked in. So I'd already been out however many months, 9 months. And his girlfriend was sitting in the truck. Still just that level of disrespect. He would talk shit to anyone that was in my life. Meanwhile, he had his girlfriend and, right away she was living with him and the kids. Turned my middle child against me for about 2 weeks, saying I abused him. We went away for a weekend and he decided to throw a temper tantrum. For anyone who knows me, I'm not a very big person. And him throwing a temper tantrum, as a parent, you discipline your child. I told him to go into the trailer. He didn't want to listen, so I was taking him into the trailer. Well, he decided to start throwing fists. as anyone my size would do when your kid's throwing fists at you, you bear hug them. It ended up he went down to the ground, and that apparently is considered abuse, according to my ex. So for 2 weeks, my middle child would not talk to me, would not come see me, nothing. Until one day I was at the school picking up his brother and sister, because I believe they were both still there. Either way, I was there getting one of them, because Emma would have still been there. And he went to get on the bus ignoring me. Guard dog's doing her job. He went to get on the bus ignoring me. And ended up coming over to see me, crying. And then you start to recognize all of these pieces that were put into his head from his father that had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with anything I had done. The kids were seeing all of the disrespect and all of the things come together, and it wasn't good. So last summer, my life was an absolute dumpster fire. And I said that. Those were my words. I was in a mastermind, and those were my words. My life is a fucking dumpster fire right now. And I wanted to be able to share all of this, but I was not in a place to do that. It was still way too raw. So December of last year, near the end of December, I had enough. I had decided at that point I was done surviving. I was done going through this shit. I had healed enough to stand strong in who I am and what I want. And I remembered I left for a fucking reason. So that's when everything got to start shifting for me. I muted his texts. So for anyone who is in this situation, these are some things that you can put into place so that you get to start living your fucking life. Because everyone thinks that once you leave the narcissist that it's done. It's not. If you have kids, it's not done, because you still have to communicate about your kids. And let me tell you, even now with all these boundaries in place, there's moments. There are moments, because he will sign them up for stuff on my weekends, and I'm expected to still drop whatever. If I have plans to drop whatever I'm doing, but it's okay, because I've learned how to move through these pieces without letting it get to me. Mute the text messages. Biggest thing I ever did. If he messages me, it does not pop up on my home screen. Unless I open up my phone, I don't see it. And if it's about the kids, or if it's not about the kids, I don't respond. Best thing ever. You can't completely delete them. You still have children together. But you can learn how to navigate these pieces so that you get to take your life back. That's why you leave, right? You leave so that you get to take your life back and have a life. I no longer, and now, this is more of a, in the last 3 months, no longer give a fuck about what he thinks or the repercussions that come with sharing everything that I am sharing. Because, like I have said on this show before, if you have not caught the previous episodes where we talk about narcissistic abuse, my perception of the events that occurred, for me, is my perception. His perception is his perception. If he doesn't like my perception of the events as they unfolded, that's not on me. So now, I don't care. I literally don't care. Last January, that just passed, I had it out with my oldest. It was a power struggle. You know, he's listening to his dad. He's going off of the things that his dad is saying. And I basically let him know who the parent was and how things were going to be under my roof. And I can tell you, since that day, he is a completely different child. And the level of respect that he has for me is, sometimes I'm still in awe. That's how much things have changed. Now, as of tomorrow officially, I am moving back closer to where they are, because in the school year, my boys are living there and staying in school out that way, and my daughter is here with me. As of today, she started back at her old school with her brother. And for all of us, we are doing this. But I've put boundaries in place. Muted the text message. Like there's things you have to do to protect yourself so that you can go from that survival state into a state of thriving. And it's one, really recognizing who the fuck you are and what it is you want in life, and not letting anyone come in and disrespect that. No one has that right. I've looked selfish. I've looked like a bitch. I have looked like the meanest person in the world. But I don't care. Because this is my life and my decisions, and I am the one who gets to make those choices for how I want my life to look. My ex and I have a better relationship right now, setting those boundaries. And that is sometimes hard to share, but it's having this deeper understanding and knowing of this is how he is. He's not going to fucking change. I know he's not going to change, but what he does doesn't affect me at all. Does he have his moments where he's a dick? Of course he does. Nothing has changed. But putting those boundaries in place for myself has allowed the dynamic between us to change. So there's a big difference. He's still who he is, but the boundaries that I have put in place has allowed that dynamic to change. And for the kids, it is obviously 10 times better, right? Tomorrow marks a whole new chapter for me and for my life and moving forward. And if I didn't get over the fact of, caring what he thinks, work through all those deep healing issues of the pieces that I've gone through, the lack of confidence, the lack of boundaries, the people pleasing. That's one of the biggest pieces is people pleasing. Nothing I ever did was good enough. And you are always striving to do better and do more. Do what makes you happy. People often take advantage of your feelings when you love them. That's it. A narcissist use that. They use that connection to take advantage. And for them, it fuels their ego. So it's, let's see just how much we can whittle her down. But when you rebuild, this is going to be a whole other story. But last Friday, I got the keys to my new house, and he came through to help. There's little things that, some of us girls just don't know how to do, like a tankless hot water tank that I've never seen before. Figured out how to power it on, still couldn't figure out why I didn't have hot water. Turns out you gotta turn the gas on in order to get the hot water. But he came through the house. He was able to help me with that. He helped me plug the fridge in. Everything in the house is brand new. It's a brand new home. And I'm appreciative of that. At the same time, he was going through and picking out every little thing that he saw was wrong with the house. My mom noticed that. Again, I don't give a fuck. I know what I'm creating and what I'm building, and I'm appreciative that he was able to stop by and help me do those things that I couldn't do. And anything else just rolls off my shoulder. I don't care. And that is how you get to go from living in survival to thriving. Because you don't let the little things bug you. What he thinks holds no power over me anymore. What he nitpicked about my house holds zero power over me. Because the fact that I got this brand new house that's massive, by the way, I didn't even realize how big it was, on my own. Thank you. Doing what I wanted to do, paying what I want to pay. These are all things that I have done for me, for my kids, by myself. And that is something he can never take away from me. His words do not hold any power over my life anymore and what it is I am creating. That is how you move into thriving. So, I'm going to close out this episode. I want everyone to, if you're in a toxic relationship or you're just out of, or you've been out of for a while, but, their words still hold power over you. I want this to sink in. In life, we get choices. You can look for the excuses, or you can take action. The choice is yours. I've never been one to look for excuses. If you are needing support, I am here. We're here to do this together. We're here to come together. And that is why I've created the TLC community for women who have been in toxic relationships and are still in toxic relationships, but need that support from women who get it. I get it. I've been there. All of these pieces are things I have experienced, and being able to support you through that, give you a new perspective, help you see a way out, help you see what that forward looks like for you. One of my favorite things to do. Because we always get a choice, and we can sit in that victim mentality, which gets you nowhere, or you can make the choice to move into your I don't give a fuck era, like me, and thrive. You get to choose. I hope you guys have a great Monday. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, and I will see you guys back here on Wednesday from my new office. Bye, guys.